Ethiopia,
Okay.
of northern Kenya.
You even have a name tag.
Oh, wait, what did it say?
Oh, guys, we're getting
It's
fancy.
spelled wrong, but that's okay.
Wow.
No.
Isn't it KJ?
No, that's right.
No, we're getting fancy.
But that's impressive.
I thought it was KJ.
No.
Like, but it was like Nordic spelling.
There's some people that have that, but not me. Good job.
I thought it was,
She looked at the email address
I always, why did I think it was KJER?
because you never really looked at it.
I
You know somebody else with that spelling?
actually, I do. My daughter's old boyfriend's mom's name. They were like Nordic folks. What do you got?
So, do you think that anyone would want a hard copy of the memo?
Probably,
So I brought several.
probably. Like, from staff. I would brought a computer.
Yeah, I was suddenly
I've
like,
had meetings since 2 o'clock.
We've got.
yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I hope mine doesn't die. Happens. So would it be best to just put one in every spot?
You can put one, yeah. Jason.
Yeah. You all read it, right?
I did.
You never know.
You have yours?
I don't, I have my computer's down.
Oh.
I went to bring it in.
Did that give you enough? I have more.
No, we got it.
Perfect. Who am I sitting next to? Mark.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever come to a study session since we've resurrected them.
Oh, yeah?
So I didn't realize we all sat in like a round table.
It wouldn't feel much like a study session if
Yeah.
you weren't, right? Just we get our backs to the audience that might be throwing darts at us, right? Or daggers.
We'll get.
Not tonight,
No,
no,
right,
just
yeah,
depends on the
just-
topic.
Yeah, when the,
Progress.
wait, what? Sorry.
What do you say?
Talent there.
You know, after last week with Jill gone, now I've, like tomorrow, we have a little session. She's gonna show me a few, tricks with routing a building permit. Cause I apparently routed it incorrectly. Everybody got it and they know what they're supposed to do, but they're like, why'd it come to me like this?
You have some proven software or?
Yeah.
Doing it right?
Know how to use it.
What is your software?
Uh,
Curious.
Tyler Intergov.
Oh, wow, that's expensive kind.
Is it?
Yeah, compared to some.
SmartGov, and but it's not SmartGov anymore, is it?
There's a SmartGov.
There's SmartGov now, they
Bought out. I thought the county used smart.
county uses SmartGov or what was SmartGov?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's.
I think if Dude Solutions bought them and then
Yeah.
they were renamed
Yeah,
because Dude
that was
Solutions
it.
was put, yeah.
We did some stuff with Dudes. Yeah.
But then they changed their name to something more
Yeah,
Well,
Can you
less controversial.
still mute these?
you can, on the backside, there's a button.
Wait, rid of the SmartGov?
Trying to think, I don't know what I did.
I've been very interested in that over my career of like having the right permitting.
Yes.
software, and some
And
of them are very expensive.
So what drove our decision about what 9 years ago was basically financial software. And so it was,
It's not
Un-
picking up sound, is it? I didn't do.
unfortunately,
That's why.
that's where the decision was made. So Tyler Encode financial software, and then we
I'm
bought
just trying to see what you
the
do.
the other suites,
modules.
yeah, the other modules with it without fully vetting it throughout. I was here at that point, so I know this without having some departments really
So
vet
are you
it.
not loving it for permitting?
No, not loving it. Staff have become more accustomed to it, but it's not real intuitive,
That's why.
and it's probably built for a much larger entity. It's just got so many bells and whistles and their support isn't great.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
Everything, but yeah, I mean, there's that whole piece of it time. When I was in Moses Lake,
No, he
where's
was
it
all-
starting over? We were going through the process
Because of the
of
red
our
eye.
queue and trying to find a new solution because we had
Yeah.
smart, no.
Probably picking up on that.
I don't remember what it was. It was one that was really built for asset management,
Mhm.
for public works.
Yeah.
Everything.
Um,
And so we were looking at SmartGov / whatever it's called
Yes.
now, and Tyler. And that's what finance was switching to as Tyler.
mhm.
We're like, well, it's,
Yeah.
I've heard nothing
Correct.
but awesome things about.
Yeah, we've gone to asset management, through Tyler. Our utility billing, obviously is through Tyler too, but, we're looking at other options for asset management because it is just so clunky.
Yeah.
started to do some updates. That's nice.
Isn't it?
I should have just carried it over because I shut it down for like 5 minutes. No. My goodness.
See, I even.
Yes, did you see my cancellation
Jay.
this week?
I never got an invitation, so.
Good, I like it that way. Okay, that's all you care. So, yeah,
I wasn't invited to get.
I'm actually flying in at 6 a.m. Friday morning
Ooh,
and coming here, so if you wanna meet, we can make it happen. 6:30, right? Half hour from SeaTac?
Yeah, right. At 8 o'clock in the morning, man?
And everything looks.
Hey, Melissa. You locked me out on.
Oh. Yeah, figure it out.
Crap.
Sloppy services though, right?
Sharon, was it
Had
not
everything
even booting up?
too.
Okay,
So just,
Always the way.
And the thing is, I think I'm very on it, I check the emails, right? So the fact that it's like breaking up on it, not because I just.
yeah,
I've never downloaded anything to it, I mean, I've done a thing here too, that's it.
Sharewares, pilot, but on those just. Long down. I just replaced a hard drive on my kids, brand new, 1 year old, things they're expensive, the hard drive stuff is big. I bought one, and so it is 3 times. But that,
Pretty easy to replace, huh?
yeah.
Don't they just plug in?
Like,
Oh,
I feel like it's only a year old already.
But the hard drives, I got a credit card, the terabyte hard drive. No wonder the thing crashed. But I bought a normal size hard drive, 3 terabytes, $40.
That's crazy. 3 terabytes for $40.
Yeah, it's $44 on Amazon.
Like,
Wow.
10 years ago, that would have been like $3,000 or something. It's just much.
My first computer, I think, bought it, there's a store in Lake called Smith's. I think it sold computer computers. 2000, and took me another 3 years to figure it out, and then it had like a 1 megabyte.
I think I remember Smith's, yeah,
Yeah, it was over there in Lacey.
yeah. You need 2 people to carry the computer out, right?
It wasn't that, but it didn't last very long and didn't hold anything. I think the payments lasted longer than the computer did.
Longest that they have had in a year.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It might be time to like.
I had some gateway boxes showed at my house and back in the day.
Then it called really well. but they
Commodore
were-
64.
Hmm.
Those are the best.
There's 700 firefighters up there at the port, told me today.
It's busy, yeah.
Is that all? It looks like more.
They get that help, it's got fire.
Yeah.
It's not gonna go out till
They
the.
go work up there and
rains.
sleep in a pup tent in the middle of
Yeah,
the.
I hope they got some, there. Well, there's all that's got it.
All right, good evening, welcome to the study session of August 12th. Mary, we do a roll call, please.
Yes, I will. Councilmember Blush,
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Here. Councilmember Gilmore.
Here.
Mayor Nisco.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sherman. Here. Councilmember Sapp. Here. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here. Thank you.
Still working.
Tonight's study session is about the comprehensive plan. Committee Economic Development Director is not with us tonight, so I believe Mark and.
Let me start, well,
Okay.
Kirsten's trying to get up to speed here. Yeah, yeah, if you don't mind. We're having-
Decided to update
Yeah.
about 8 minutes ago, so.
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
a PowerPoint, but I'm like. Anyway,
If, all else fails, I can share over there too, right? Did we receive? the
I forwarded it to just you, well, I
Okay.
forwarded it to you and, oh, let's see, maybe.
Or you can email it to me. I'm already logged in there, Mary, and I can load it on there. How about that? We'll figure this out.
It might work.
There we go. We're getting
We're getting there.
close. We're getting close, but, yeah, as Mr. Mayor said, this is the first study session for our comprehensive plan update. A lot of work has been gone into this. I want to recognize the steering committee that has been working on this, providing input and guidance to staff and to our consultant team working on this. As you know, this is in parallel with Mason County. And so there's a lot of synergy and a lot of work working with particularly, we're not going to get into a lot of nuts and bolts here that but this is kind of staging for another study session. Most likely in September, we'll get some feedback tonight to better understand kind of with some of the questions, some of the feedback from you, where we're gonna go and give us an opportunity to go back, regroup a little bit and refine some of the elements still being worked on. So, you know, land use and transportation, things like that will come down the pike at a little later date. So I guess one thing while Kirsten's getting forward, I am heading out tonight, as the mayor mentioned, Washington City Managers Association Conference in Walla Walla for the next couple of days. I'll be back Friday morning, so I canceled briefings on Thursday already. Councilmember Sapp and Councilmember Stearns, and then Councilmember Gutierrez and Mayor Nisco, and yes, Thursday, Councilmember Gilmore on Friday. I'm happy to schedule. I've got fairly open schedule on Friday though, so I'm happy to schedule something again Friday when I get back. I apologize, I didn't already send that link out to you or send a meeting notice, so please feel free to reach out. We can do that now if you like, to schedule something at an alternate date. And we're making progress here.
Did you want to do a quick introduction though, or?
Jason, please.
You should have seen in your packet, you have a draft, you know, mostly formatted partial document that includes 5 chapters: the introduction, parks and recreation element, capital facilities and utilities element, shoreline and economic development element. Personally, I don't expect as much input from council members on this. I mean, the meat of a comp plan is basically your land use element, housing element, and the transportation element. Those are all being drafted right now. They'll be coming to you shortly. A lot of the information that's in what you received tonight is informed by plans we've already adopted. Like, for example, capital facilities elements, that's informed by our sewer comprehensive plan, our water comprehensive plan, our storm drainage plans. The shoreline element is verbatim out of our shoreline master program. You know, point being, these are largely lifted from other documents and consolidating them and coordinating them with, you know, our goals, policies for land use, for development, with the countywide planning policies, those sorts of things. And what we've got here today is our consultant, Kirsten Peterson from SCJ. She's been driving a lot of this with Director Hill, and she's going to kind of give you, you know, just in my view, kind of a comprehensive plan 101. You know, what's comprehensive plan? What are some of the changes in these chapters for Shelton? What have we done to date? I think we're going to talk a little bit about population numbers and where they came from. That'll be talked a lot more at a future meeting when we talk housing and land use. But I'll turn it over to Kirsten if.
No, I can speak. It's just, for whatever reason, my computer decided to do a bunch of updates today. And then I finally turned on and I am trying to get access to my network. But first of all, I haven't actually met you guys yet. So I work with SCJ Alliance, and when I first joined, it was May of last year, I'd come from the public sector. So I had been a community development director, and I'm almost to 20 years working for planning. And so I'm used to kind of being in the role of like city staff. And so anyway, it's kind of fun to like work with smaller communities. I love working with small communities. But so Jason gave a little bit of an introduction. There is a handout that you had on your desk, and it probably was in your council packet too, but we brought a hard copy. And it's just a kind of a summary of a little bit of the requirements for updates to comprehensive plans. And then there's a breakdown of what changed from the old plan to the new plan per element that you're getting. So in here on page 4 of your document, there's a table of contents comparison. It's pretty much the same. You got your introduction, land use chapter. Something that changed was we had a separate chapter 10, which is urban growth area, that we've now merged with land use. And then you've still got parks and rec, transportation, housing, capital facilities and utilities, shoreline, historic preservation, and economic development. And the new chapter 10 is going to be the state required climate change and resiliency chapter. But it looks like my PowerPoint is finally coming up. So that's good to know. And now what I need to do is actually get onto the Zoom account. So I have a PowerPoint that just kind of mimics and follows along with this information here. So we provided you with a lot of information. We didn't intend for you to read through every minute section of it. If you did, awesome. I don't know who had that much time over the weekend, but that would be great. Just kind of introduce you to it today, and we'll go through 5 of the chapters, just real quick summary. And then if you have feedback, you know, things you want to prioritize, let us know. But this is kind of your first blush introduction to what is included in the comp plan, what's required to be included in the comp plan. And then we want to hear from the city council, even though the steering committee has been working on it. This is the group that's going to be adopting the plan. So we want to make sure it meets your goals and priorities, you know, hearing from the community and what they had recommended. I need to get into the link, which Donna did send me earlier.
Yeah.
Had everything queued up. We had a meeting before this meeting and it was all queued up and ready to go. And then I walked in here and it
The screen went black.
decided to do its
Up there.
thing, and they've been watching it like, oh my goodness. It's being really sensitive right now. Okay, join the Zoom meeting. There's all these things scrolling right now, doing these fun things. So I kind of went into what's changed with your current comp plan to the new plan. But basically the state gives really specific guidance on what you're supposed to include in it. And a comprehensive plan is really a 20-year plan for growth. It's like looking out over the horizon. How are we going to grow over time? And the biggest thing that you need to look at is how much population are you projecting to grow by over the 20-year planning horizon? And the state has a formula that you're supposed to follow for calculating that, but they allow for you to look at the difference between low, medium, and high growth. But we worked with the county to figure out what those population projections would be. Sorry, it's still working here. We used a sub-consulting firm called FCS Group where they do those kinds of data analyses, and spent a lot of time, a few months, really kind of diving into different scenarios and figuring out what the population growth would be. And so we've come up with how much we need to project for in Shelton. I always say it doesn't mean you're actually going to get that exact number of population growth, but we need to plan for that and be prepared infrastructure wise, you know, utilities, your transportation, your road network. But also we start looking at, well, what does that mean for the development code? And do we need to look at what we allow in the different zoning districts? Do we need to change the zoning districts, add any new zoning designations? What can we do over time to accommodate the new growth? Wow, it finally let me join. And then we'll see if we can actually connect the PowerPoint too. Thank you. No, that's great. So the state has a lot of really specific guidance for what you include in your comprehensive plan. And there's a checklist that you're supposed to follow. And then one of the key things is as they come out with new housing legislation, we need to make sure that we're accounting for the new legislation within the comp plan. It's typically within the goals and policies, but sometimes it's in studies that you might need to do. So today is going to be kind of just a quick introduction. And okay, let me get back to the PowerPoint. Pulled up an old one too. Okay, so I am able to share screen, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And this is just to kind of guide us through this because it's a 18-page document, which is a lot shorter than, I don't know, would you get 100 pages or so? Just to give you a summary. Oh, great, look at that. It actually is working. Oh my goodness. And then hopefully my computer works amazingly tomorrow with all these updates, right? That'd be awesome. Okay. Definitely don't need to turn up the volume. So, and I'll just say, we pulled some pictures offline or from online, and so we tried to have fun with that for this PowerPoint, but this is really more about sharing the information in here. Okay. It will progress. Okay. All right. Well, first we're going to start with a summary of what's in the comp plan. So as we've discussed, the steering committee's been working on this for well over a year. And really, we just want to make sure it's in compliance with the Growth Management Act. A lot of communities just want to make sure you're just meeting the minimum requirements. Some decide to go a little bit above and beyond. They want to study other things. So we're just going to summarize those state requirements, talk about the updates we've made so far, highlight next steps, but we want to give you the opportunity to start looking at this in advance of the adoption, which we're planning for December. So here we are, beginning of August, and this is where we're nearing the end of finalizing this, but we want you to start seeing what's going on so that it's not a surprise to you later on. So a little bit of background. It used to be that the jurisdictions had to update their comp plan every 8 years. There's some new legislation that changed it to every 10 years. But there's a 5-year check-in point. So we're not even sure exactly what that's going to look like moving forward. So the update to the comp plan needs to make sure we address changes in state law. I mentioned that. We have to demonstrate that we're, how are we going to plan for the growth in population and how does that impact land use? There's definitely some new housing legislation out there. There's been this huge priority at the state level to make sure that we're increasing opportunities for housing across the state, both in terms of housing stock, that there's enough housing available, which impacts affordability and affordability. And so one of the ways they're trying to do that is trying to get jurisdictions to increase the density, whereas maybe in the past you allowed only 1 unit per lot. Well, could you try 2? You know, so they've got new ADU legislation and middle housing legislation out there. There's also new environmental regulations and some engagement requirements that you have to reach out to the underserved and vulnerable populations. You have to demonstrate that you've made efforts to do that. And then we want to make sure it's aligned with the countywide planning policies. So a lot of work went into doing that earlier. I want to say probably back in August of last year, we really started diving into some work between the city and the county on the CPPs. So we really want to make sure that the plan is relevant to Shelton. We've taken the existing one, we've updated it, and then we want to be responding to the forecasts and what the priorities are of the city council. So diving a little bit deeper into the state mandates, you had House Bill 1220 that requires cities to accommodate for all income levels and include emergency housing and shelter regulations in your codes. House Bill 1241 is the one that changed the cycle from 8 years to 10 with that 5-year implementation report. House Bill 1717 strengthens tribal consultation during the planning process. House Bill 5828 and others, that's where you're trying to reduce the barriers to housing production. There's a variety of methods for doing that. With this process, we're looking more at having policies that will lend themselves to some zoning flexibility, maybe allowing more multifamily housing, having some overlays. See that here. And then House Bill 1181 is the one regarding climate change impacts, where you have to do that in your mandate. So your new chapter 10 will focus on climate planning or resilience. And what we're doing with that is just looking what the actual hazards are in the community. Are you vulnerable to drought or wildland fires or flooding? And so what are actions that you can take? So it's going to really tie into the hazard mitigation plan. So we want to make it relevant. And fortunately, we don't have to worry about some of the other counties have to look at greenhouse gas emissions reductions. We don't have to focus on that here in Shelton based on the population side. So the comp plan update requirements themselves are what we're going to look at next. In addition to the comp plan, there's some concurrent periodic update requirements regarding development code, but that will come after you update the comp plan. We'll set your goals and policies, and then those will guide the updates to your development code. That will come later. Also need to update your critical areas ordinance, and that will kind of come later. What we're gonna do from our consulting perspective is provide a summary to Jason and other staff of like, these are the recommended areas to head on. So we just want you to be aware that's coming. We also need to be looking closely at the urban growth area. That is where potential growth could happen. Can't get it into the city limits. So as part of the land use process, we just need to make sure that your GA has capacity to serve the anticipated population, have new housing, accommodate for or the employment projections through the next 20 years. So those will be addressed in the land use, housing, and economic development chapters. And I pointed this out before, but your current plan has a standalone UGA chapter, and we're just like merging it because they were really quite separated. It used to be chapter 2 land use, and then chapter 10 was the UGA, and just had to flip between chapters. So now we're just compiling it all. It'll be a little bit long chapter, but you'll find it all in one place that way. And then we just wanted to share just a little bit about the projections. In 2022, it showed your population at 10,044. And the projection for 2044 is 12,988. Some of the studies we've done have taken it out to 2050. So we extrapolated and we're just showing both those numbers, but we only have to account for 20 years of growth. So just demonstrating that here. And that graph was found in your introduction chapter of the comp plan. And then we just wanted to share this information. So with the FCS group, and we'd come up with the population growth and the housing distribution. So the projected population increase for Shelton and the UGA over the next 20 years was 7,401. You can see for the full county is 14,801. So if you continue along the line for Shelton, you'll see that that accounts for anticipated projected housing units of 2,872. And being the only city in the county, your city and UGA are gonna have 41% of the share of that new growth. So fortunately, we've been able to demonstrate that you can accommodate that growth. So wanted to share some of those numbers, and that was what was reached or arrived at in consultation with the county. So moving on to the comprehensive plan itself, the state has some very specific requirements for which elements must be included. And so it lists those mandatory ones as land use, housing, capital facilities, utilities, transportation, economic development, and parks and recreation is encouraged but not required. And they say it's not required because they didn't provide funding to update that, but you guys already had one. You have a PROST plan. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then you already had one for historic preservation, so we're maintaining that. And then you had one for shoreline management as well. So got some things just kind of blocking my view here. So some of the priorities we wanted to address with this update were that we would accommodate for the projected growth through infill development. And that will mean like having goals and policies that support it. But then in the future, making sure the development code has the updates needed there, and your zoning map will be updated as well. We also want to make sure we're maintaining the community character while increasing the housing supply and accommodating for affordability. And then updating the infrastructure planning and the capital facilities and utilities elements, and then maintaining consistency with the countywide planning policies. Okay, let's work. Okay, so talked about, we've got these different chapters. What you're seeing today is kind of a scattering. It was included in your packet. You've got the introduction chapter, which really kind of dives in. If you don't read anything else, look at that chapter and you'll just see how it relates to the state requirements and other relevant plans. And it'll give you a lot more detail than I'm trying to go over quickly today. And then chapter 3, Parks and Rec, chapter 6, Capital Facilities and Utilities, 7 is Shoreline, and 9 is Economic Development. So we've got a slide on each of those. Some of them are fairly minimal changes, like Shoreline. The one that has the most changes from your prior one is the Economic Development chapter, and we'll get to that in a little bit later when we get to those slides. Where I had you go when I was waiting for my PowerPoint to pull up, and I had you turn to a slide or page in the packet. there's not a whole lot of difference, just chapter 2 is merging land use with UGA and then adding the climate plan as well. So when you get to the introduction chapter, the original or the 2017 plan had a pretty lengthy vision statement in there with several bullet points, and the steering committee went through an exercise and just kind of really zeroed in on a new vision statement. So that's incorporated in your introduction chapter. We give a lot of this background that I just shared with you, like the requirements of the Growth Management Act. We have a little bit of information on your community demographics, so that's the community profile area. So updated the history section a little bit, talk a little bit about the geography and then the population trends, which we just looked at. So this chapter is just, if somebody doesn't know what a comp plan is, you open it up and it explains to you what it is. And then it talks about how it integrates with other plans, like the Mason County Comp Plan, other regional plans. And then we share a little bit about the engagement that has occurred. So for instance, there was a survey that took place, an online survey, and then there was some events that took place. I want to say a few of them, like the Expo and the Shelton Art Walk last year and this year. And what kind of feedback did we get from the community? So like there was a penny poll where people could put, they're given so many pennies, except we actually did pearls. You're given so many, and here's like, if you were going to spend the city's money, what would you spend it on? It would be new roads, things like that to help kind of prioritize. And we had a big idea board for people to write down things and then like what they love about Shelton. And then the survey had other questions. And so, we're hearing things like people wanted a splash pad. So stuff like that ends up in the Parks and Rec element. So there's a little piece on that, but we also have a separate public engagement summary that we produced on activities to date, but it will be updated with explaining what will be occurring over the next 6 months with opportunities for public feedback, with public noticing, the steering committee's review, city council's review. So that will be updated, and it's something that would end up going online. It won't be part of the comp plan, but it will just kind of be a background document. So with Parks and Recreation, that's unique because you have an adopted Parks, Rec, open space, and trails plan. So your chapter 3 is adopting that pros plan by through the comp plan. But we're also just pulling in pieces of it. So if somebody just wanted to look at like at a glance what you could find in the bigger pros plan, there's information in there. But then we also provided a little bit of a summary of what we heard at the community events related to Parks and Recreation. So that's in there. And then we expanded on some funding strategies, and we actually also talked about some of the service standards that you'll find in the development code related to new development. So typically if a new subdivision comes in, ideally you'd be looking at, well, is that going to trigger the need for more parks space? Does that mean we're going to ask park or to provide funding to go towards existing parks? So level of service standards kind of things are addressed.
I can expand on that if you want, but yeah, we require parks with new subdivisions.
And sometimes it comes down to the size of the subdivision. Say it's like a 10-lot subdivision. I'm not familiar exactly with Shelton, but sometimes it's just the number of new dwelling units and the projected population increase. Does it warrant a new park or a trail or whatever that may be? So there's not a lot of difference. I want to give you a summary of the changes. Capital facilities and financing is one that's really just fed by your public works department. And we do outreach to all the different utility providers, the PUDs. With capital facilities, we even talk to the school districts, try to just get information from them and do some planning. What do we anticipate growth wise? Does that mean, we need to be looking at the number of firefighters in the future? What do we need to do to expand the utilities? I know you guys went through this massive process in the past regarding wastewater treatment. So that's in play. So it's a lot about coordination and just pulling data together and like, how are you going to finance it? So sometimes it's just identifying what are some of the sources of funding. Can you pull together the funds yourselves? Are you going to be able to get grants? You just list those out. But typically, if you're going to have a 6-year capital improvement plan, plus you want to look at what do you think it is going to be for the 20-year horizon. If it's in your 6-year CIP, usually you can use that to help get grants, like the TIB funding.
Absolutely. RCO funding and others,
Yeah.
particularly other governmental funding, state and
Mhm.
federal funding.
So it's just great to have it in your comp plan, and usually it's adopted, that is like an appendice. And you could change it every year, you should be changing it every year, your 6-year TIP, I think that's mandated that you update that annually. And so you can shift your priorities over the years. You just want it in there, but if you're like, oh, we're gonna build this in 3 years, and like, ooh, we need to do that sooner because of some new development, let's shift that to year 2. But you can go after these grant funds.
Or some of them can change because of development, because it
Mhm.
could be,
Yeah.
it could be developer driven, right?
Yeah.
As we're seeing, let's see, the signal at 13th and
Mhm.
Alpine Way, that's being installed by the developer because of the subdivision going on to the east. So some of these CIP projects can change based on the development that's happening around there. They could be impacts or mitigation based on the impacts they're bringing to our community.
Yeah. It's a very important chapter. When I used to work for Ellensburg, and the Public Works Department was pretty good about getting TIV grants like every other year because they'd identified all these things, especially sidewalks. Because as a community that kept annexing land that was in the county and developed without sidewalks. So they're trying to use the Safe Routes to School money plus TIB grants and just really get the safer routes to school. And so they did some pretty cool sidewalk improvements over time. And it also helps to like get yourself on the board or attend the meetings, like somebody from your jurisdiction. So I just saw that happen. It was not something I was part of, but because I would update the comp plan every year, and we always made sure we updated the appendices every year with the 6-year capital improvement plans for every department, wastewater, water. We also own lights and gas over there in Ellensburg, and just all the plans to make sure that you kept them current so you could be eligible for those grants. And then the next one is shoreline, and we don't need to say a whole lot about it. It's really just exactly copying the goals and policies out of the shoreline element. All we did was update the reference to the most current shoreline plan. And we were talking today about whether or not we want to like really minimize what's in there, because you have an adopted shoreline management.
Yeah, we might, it's on my list to maybe condense down to, for lack of a better term, a bullet point list, rather than this literally gets into the minutia and has goals, policies, all these things that are lifted directly from the plan we already adopted, so.
Yeah. So that one, you got a lot in your packet, but this one and Parks and Rec, there's not a lot to them. I'd really encourage you to read the introduction. Capital facilities is interesting. And then this memo goes in a lot more detail about what's different, but the version you got in the council packet was like a cleaned up version with comments on the side. But online on the website, they've updated like the track changes version, so it's really messy, but you can go and see what changes were, like the edits that were made.
We posted both versions, so if you
Yeah.
really want to get into the weeds, you can see exactly
Yeah.
what the existing plan says, then there's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
strikeout and.
And it's a lot because sometimes we like moved the location of text, so then you just have all this stuff struck out, and we didn't really change much, it just got moved, so sometimes it gets messy. But it's helpful to see the changes that were made over time. And then the comments sometimes will say, hey, we updated this because we got this new information about this topic. So moving on to economic development. This is the one that changed the most. And on page 14 is where you'll see a little bit of information about the differences. And we had taken this to the steering committee a few months back, and they had a lot of really great feedback. We had originally done our analysis in 24. And then I think it was January, February 25, Mason County came out with their new target sector study, and we hadn't actually been aware of that. So we went back in and we wanted to incorporate data from that study. And so we've pointed out that at the beginning of the element, we're pulling data from the census, but we're also trying to incorporate information that's extrapolated from the Mason County target sector study, and really focusing on the industries they wanted to try to draw into the county, but knowing that Shelton's probably going to be the home base for a lot of that job growth because you are the only city and the county seat. And That's where a lot of the growth is gonna happen. You're gonna have some in Belfair too. They've done some of the work. But, so we really expanded on that. And so with all of the chapters, for the most part, you're gonna see like a narrative describing just information about Shelton. And then it's gonna dive into the goals and policies. So there's just a lot more to the narrative with your economic development chapter. We've talked a lot about, sector diversification with healthcare, retail, education, broadband as assets. We've updated the workforce profile where the commuter data, where people live and where they're going to work, deeper analysis of workforce needs. We've added some more information about land readiness and then emerging opportunities. One of the things that the steering committee pointed out was our original edits didn't include anything about the fact that you've got the creative arts district. So we added more information about the creative economy, and that was an important thing that they wanted us to include. We had a section on barriers to growth, and we kind of updated that as well. Where the workforce gaps are, what the limits are with infrastructure, which ties into your capital facilities, being aware of where you need to make those updates in infrastructure. Housing affordability can be a barrier. If you have people that can't afford to live here or have to go elsewhere, or if they live here but have to go elsewhere for work, it goes both ways. So trying to address that. We gave more information about the local partnerships with expanded roles for the city, Mason County, the port, PUD3, Mason Health, and MACECOM. And then we hadn't had any information in there about the Shelton School District's academies. So it was great to do a little more research on that and make sure we're incorporating that, and also what the library offers up and Olympic College, and just making sure all the partnerships were agreed upon, because that's a lot what the Mason County study had highlighted. But it was also just important in general, like how can we promote economic development? What can we do to support the existing businesses? And so you see a lot of that in the narrative, but then in the goals and policies too. So the steering committee had really wanted us to add some goals and policies that were more supportive, not just attracting new growth in businesses, but how to support the existing ones and also attract new businesses. So we rewrote a lot of the goals and policies to align with the target industries, have a little bit more with measurable outcomes and land readiness. And then there's some additional information supporting entrepreneurship. So there was some emphasis on youth employment, life skills training, small business growth, and sector-specific metrics. So that's one that we'd love to get feedback on. If there's things you feel that shouldn't have been included, or you felt we missed something, we want to hear it. So I'm guessing you probably want to feed your comments through to Jason, who can send them to me if you've got them. And then with next steps, we have this joint meeting today, and Mark alluded to having probably your first meeting in September being another joint study session. We're going to bring back housing and land use, which are really key ones. And we'll have some future land use maps and just talk about potential zoning ideas of maybe having some multifamily areas that weren't previously zoned that, and some residential target areas, and just kind of really talking through that. Talk through that.
And expanding our commercial zoning, like as an example, our commercial corridor down Olympic Highway all the way to the south end of town is zoned the same as the shopping center area, where the big box stores are. And it just, we're probably going to recommend cleaving those apart, have more of a big box oriented type retail commercial area, and then more of a town centric, I guess you could say, smaller type business commercial zone, rather than a catch-all that can make it hard for certain businesses to locate, because it's meant to catch all. So it makes it hard for some to come in.
Yeah, so we'll have new chapters to review at the next meeting, and then we got this refinement stage. So we want to refine, we want to get feedback, hear from you and the community members. And then when we get to a stage where we feel like it's a final draft, we need to send it to Commerce. They have a 60-day review period. Simultaneously, we're doing an environmental impact statement. That will go out. It's already drafted. There's a draft, but we don't want to put it out till the transportation element is done. I don't know that will be ready at the next meeting or not. We hope to. we had to spend quite a bit of time trying to find a company that could do a transportation demand model because we really needed to analyze where intersection improvements needed to be made based on all sorts of different factors. I'm not a transportation planner. I have team members that do this, but we finally got TRPC to take that work on, but we had to wait for other work to be finished. It's Thurston Regional Planning Council, but it will be really unique because we'll be able to tie it into the, when obviously your transportation patterns and your road networks tie in to what's happening in Thurston County. But we also want to be really careful that we don't have the state trying to impose certain improvements on the city of Shelton that can't afford to do some of those major improvements. So that is being conducted right now. And so when the transportation demand model is finished, we'll update the transportation element. So the transportation element has an existing condition that's completely written. It's the future conditions and forecasting that we're trying to finalize. So you'll get a lot of information. So I kind of went off in a tangent there, but the EIS will go out for public review as well, simultaneous to the 60-day notice to commerce. So there'll be this time period where council can still be reviewing and talking and giving feedback. And it's just a matter of if it changed from what we sent to commerce, we're just going to track it, like in a spreadsheet of like, here's any additional updates we made. And then eventually we'll get to having public hearings with city council or a public hearing. You could always decide to continue them, and then adoption. So the goal is to have it adopted by December 2025. And, it is doable. We just got to get the transportation demand model done. But I'll just say this, if it bled into January, it wouldn't impact you. There's nothing that would happen to the city, but our goal is to get it done in time. They set these deadlines and then different things occur in each community and maybe you shift priorities and you decide you want to make a change to something, but that's why we want you to see it now. We don't want it to be this, like December is the first glance at it and you're like, hey, what? That's not what we envisioned in our community. So I think that, any questions do you guys have? This is really just summary.
Just have a comment. Thank you for being inclusive in your process. I want to thank Jay and Jason and yourself and your team. We had a really diverse group of people that were in there. We had a scientist, we had a chamber of commerce, we had a real estate agent, we had the mayor and myself, and we had a student from Cedar High School.
Yeah.
So we had a really diverse group that had input, and you guys made a lot of accommodations for us to get our input in and meaningful and timely. So I wanted to thank you for making that process smooth and also painful at the same time because we had to include everybody. But it was really great to have that inclusiveness in the process. I just want to thank the group and our city staff for including everybody.
Is the public comment commerce or from our public hearing?
So the public can comment on the EIS and then they also, as you open it, you can have these study sessions and decide to take comment there, but your public hearing will definitely take public
No, I
comment.
knew that, I just meant.
Yeah.
In the 60-day review, does the public have a right to comment to commerce?
Commerce doesn't ask for public comment, I guess, in their review. They're just making sure that we're meeting the statutory requirements of
Yeah,
the
they
plan.
basically use the same checklist
Yeah.
that we started with, and they start checking boxes. Do they comply with, for example, the legislation that Kirsten went over? Do they accommodate that? Yes, no.
There's no sometimes they take review from the public.
Mhm.
Yeah, usually what happens with the commerce review is they send it to all the state agencies. So Fish and Wildlife, Ecology, this Archaeology and Historic Preservation, WashDOT. All those agencies usually will review it. If they don't comment, they have no comment. But, Fish and Wildlife might say, hey, we have this feedback. So that's been the most interesting one is Fish and Wildlife because they keep changing they've been updating their guidance documents over the last couple of years and they recently came out with some new stuff. I don't think it's really going to affect the comp plan itself so much, but more like the critical areas update that needs to come later. Fish and Wildlife habitat areas. But that's a good question.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
The whole year you invested in this, I'm sure we've got another 6 months. So from this.
Let's hope we're short in 6 months, but yeah, we have the deadline by the state is adoption by the end of this year. I think the state has recognized that this is a large lift, especially for small communities that don't have internal staff that can do this work. We've got the luxury of having some consultants come and help us out, but they're helping out a number of communities at the same time. So it's nice that we have a little bit of leeway, and in fact, even received a 6-month extension on this. This was supposed to be done by July.
June 30th.
Yeah, by July 1. So
But they extended it for the last two
Yes,
cycles.
yes, yeah.
And I think we brought this up during one of our meetings, but when a single property owner owns a huge chunk of land that's zoned for commercial and residential, and they just not do anything with that land, is there any options for us to either change the zoning so we can have it elsewhere, that kind of zoning, or, because, I mean, we've got property owners that own like 900 acres of land that have done nothing with it for 20 years. And I know that holds up some potential other UGA areas for us. If it wasn't in the UGA, this is in the city limits, correct? So, I mean, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But to get more space in the UGA, but we've got all that 900 acres already in the city, it affects our growth pattern, doesn't it?
Well, there's a couple of things you're talking about there, but if you wanted to change the zoning itself, you can do that partly through accommodating it in the comp plan with the future land use map. Like this is the zoning we would support in the future. And then you can also do area-wide rezonings through ordinance versus site-specific rezones. Site-specific rezones need to be supported by the comp plan. So your comp plan needs to show like, yeah, we think as a city in the future, this property would be appropriate for this type of use. Say it's commercial, industrial, residential, and make sure your future land use map is set up to allow for that. But then you need to separately adopt your zoning change. And there's, like I said, there's two ways: area-wide rezones where you do a lot of different properties within the city all at once, or site-specific rezone. Like typically that is a property owner coming forward and making that request to the city.
Well, and if I understood your question correctly, you know, you're essentially asking if we have this land zoned, say it's commercial and it's fallow over here, this developer is not developing that land, is that limiting us from designating commercial land elsewhere, right? And I think the answer is no, as long as we can show that through either population or these.
Yeah, like
economic
as long as you don't
studies.
take away from enough residential to accommodate the housing requirements that you have, you can add more commercial. You're kind of analyzing the employment projections, but yeah, you might have some land that just
Okay,
stays that way.
I think residential might be the more specific hindrance, I think, if you will, if you have designated residential property that's not being developed.
Yeah.
Yes, then you're limited in how you can grow residentially, yeah.
and to my knowledge, that property is both.
There's mixed use, there's.
Commercial, there's mixed,
Yeah.
there's residential, there's
Light
industrial.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that came up during our meetings was a lot of the UGA area is historically polluted. We can't even use it for commercial or residential at this point. So that's something that we might want to think about in the future, is how can we unpollute an area to make it suitable for growth and development and for residents. But that's something that was a major part of what we were talking about in a lot of our meetings. It's like, well, here's some space right over here in our map. Oh, well, historical pollution there, so we don't know if we can use that. So anyway, just wanted to throw another wrench in to complicate more the question that Mayor brought up. But a lot of our growth is limited by where is it okay to build and okay to grow, because a lot of the land has been restricted to us in the future unless we want to risk a lot of different health hazards. And I wanted to bring it up. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. Thank you.
And affordable.
Yep.
Yeah, we still have the lack of utilities in certain areas of our community in the city limits, let alone the UGA. So there's some limitations to what one might think is economically viable to develop these properties. Now, as realistically, as we've talked about before, as these grow, as we keep moving these utilities and infrastructure out, it becomes more economically viable for somebody that might be further away from those facilities now. We're hoping that, that continues to take place because that's how cities grow and progress, is to the outskirts of those UGAs as those utilities progress out. By hopscotching it around septic systems and wells and development that might not meet future land use, that's what's going to limit and hinder some of this progressive growth that, we're addressing tonight.
All right, if there's nothing else, I appreciate you coming down here and
Yeah.
got some new item for discussion tonight. Session will be adjourned at 6:47.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so I'll get with Mark and then it's, well, probably not until Friday, actually, because he'll be gone.